Today we will be discussing the yesodis, the fundamentals of Afroshas Challah, and actually the very first sif in Hilchos Challah. So we have a huge sefer here, so I don't really know how to navigate this. Where is the Shulchan Aruch? Page. 630.
638.
Exactly 630.
638.
Okay, that's fine. So the very first sif in Hilchos Challah, mitzvah to say lahafresh truma me'isa v'litna l'kohen. Reishes ari yosechem challah torimu trumo. Reishes ein moishiyim ha'torah. So, if time will suffice, if we'll have enough time, we're going to discuss two topics. Topic number one, mitzvah to say lahafresh. Number two, ein moishiyim ha'torah. So mitzvah to say lahafresh. And when does that mitzvah become relevant? And that seems to be a big machlokes in the Achronim. Goes back to the days of the Rishonim. Is a Afroshas Tumas basically a matir, or is it a mitzvah? Is it upon every person who has a field, and in his field he grows produce? Does he have a chiyuv Afroshah? Or is it only if he eats, and he intends to eat? Before eating, he needs to be mafresh. And the same question would be relevant legabe challah. The mere fact that you made an issa, do you have a chiyuv of Afroshas challah? Or is it only when you come to eat? And as long as you don't eat, you don't have a chiyuv or a mitzvah of Afroshas challah. So the Taz in the very first Simini Yoredeya, and the first Simon Yodeh, as everybody knows, is Hilchos Shchita, Simon Aleph, Sivkot Yud Zayin. The Taz argues that Berachas HaShchita is not Berachas HaMitzvah. It cannot be Berachas HaMitzvah because Shchita is only a matio. And the Taz says in Gavaldik Chiddush that even though the Nusach HaBrocha is Ashikidishonu b'mitzvoisa v'tzivonu, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a Berachas HaMitzvah. It is a Berachas HaShevach. And we thank Kodesh Baruch Hu for giving us this mitzvah, but it's not Berachas HaMitzvah because Shlit is not a mitzvah. Shlit is a matio. So the first chiddush in the Taz is regarding that the Gavaldik chiddush that the Nusach HaBrocha doesn't necessarily determine the nature of the brocha. And even though it's the classical formula of Berachas HaMitzvah, Shekideshonu b'mitzvah, it's not Berachas HaMitzvah, Berachas HaShevach. But this Yesod we find in Tosis and in Rash far earlier than the Taz. Regarding Berachas Erusin, Shittas HaRosh, Ksubas Av Zayin, also in Tosis HaRosh there, and also Rosh HaLashas and Piskei HaRosh, the Rosh says Berachas Erusin, even though it's actually Kedeshon Mitzvah, it's Berachas HaShach. The Rosh feels that Erusin is not a mitzvah, it's only a matio, and therefore the Baruch is versus Shvach. And we find it in Shabbos Kuf Lamed Zayin regarding father's Baruch of Amidas Sabem, Lachnisa L'Brusa Shel Avraham Avinu, that is versus Shevach. So we have other precedents. Ashi Kedushono b'Mitzoyse v'Tzivon is not necessarily versus a mitzvah, it could be versus a Shevach. But what is this Negela in Yonenu? The Taz says, Afroshas Tumas is different. And the brocha and Tumas HaMaises is Berachas HaMitzvah, because a person has to say the brocha even if he does not eat. And therefore, Afroshas Tumas HaMaises and Challah would not be defined as a matio, but rather as a mitzvah. So the Taz clearly says, you have no mitzvah of shchita, only when you come to eat basar, but you have the mitzvah of Afroshas Tumas regardless of whether you intend to eat or not. Rabbi Kiva on the spot rejects the Taz, and he says no, would be the same. You have no mitzvah of Afroshas Tumas unless you intend to eat. And Afroshas Tumas is to be mati is a tevel, to be mator the peres la'achile. And Rabbi Kiva quotes Mogan Avram Simen Ches Shulchan Aruch Chayim Simen Ches Azulchas Tzitzis. Sivkot and Bais. The Mogan Avram deals with the basic question: do we stand or do we sit when we say Berachas HaMitzvahs? That's a very broad topic. Maybe we'll discuss some other time. maybe one will learn Hilchos Tzitzis or Hilchos Tefillin or other halachas. So the Mogen Avraham says, usually, Berachas HaMitzvah, one has to stand. Tzitzis is different. No. Because, Ein a mitzvah kol kach. And he says the same regarding Trumas HaMaises. Trumas HaMaises is a Mishnah Mefureshes that you could say the book while you're seated. The beginning of Masechet Trumas. Whether a man or a woman could say the bracha while she's seated and not dressed, whether liba, royes ever. But it's a Mefesh Mishnah. You're mafesh Trumas HaMaises and you say the bracha while you're seated. So the Mogen Avraham says, Trumas HaMaises ain't a mitzvah kol kach, because it is only when you want to eat that you have the mitzvah. So the Lashon of the Mogen Avraham is, obviously it's a mitzvah, otherwise how could you say a bracha? And the Mogen Avraham falls short of using the Chiddush of the Taz, that's Berachas HaShevach and not Berachas HaMitzvah. But he says it's different than other Berachas HaMitzvah, because it is only when you eat that you need to say the bracha. And the Akiva Eiger feels that the Mogen Avraham actually goes against the Taz. And the Mogen Avraham says, Rosh Hashanah is a matir. And therefore there is no mitzvah unless you intend to eat. And the mitzvah is matir peres la'achilach. And to me it's a gewaltige chiddush that neither the Mogen Avraham nor the Taz, nor the Akiva Eiger, three Gedolei Olam, and nobody quotes Rashi because it's a Mefuresh Rashi and Gittin Afmem Zayin and Medalef. Rashi differentiates between Bikurim and Trumas HaMaises, and Rashi says, Bikurim, if this is Reishis Bikurei Adomascha, you have a chiyuv of Bikurim, regardless of whether you intend to eat or not. But Trumas HaMaises comes to be Matir Peres La'achila. And Rashi clearly says, if you don't eat, you don't have a chiyuv of Trumas HaMaises. And therefore, Trumas HaMaises are toivel. It's tevel for a Trumas HaMaises. Bikurim is not toivel. If you took off Trumas HaMaises, the Peres Hamut of Achila, even though you did not take off Bikurim. So Rashi clearly says, there is no mitzvah of a froshes Trumas HaMaises unless the person intends to eat. So Rashi obviously is a raya to the Taz, and the Mogen Avraham and the Akiva Eiger have a different opinion, and they feel it's a mitzvah regardless of whether you eat or not. And I think the Rambam L'choire is a raya to the Taz. If it wouldn't be a Turk, I would like to have a Rambam Kedusha and Sefer HaMitzvahs LaRambam, if they're Behesed, yeah. Sefer HaMitzvahs could I have the Frankel Rambam Kedusha. So Sefer HaMitzvahs. So let's start with Minyan HaMitzvahs. Sefer HaMitzvahs Kuf Mem Vav is the mitzvah of Shlit. Shetzivonu lishchot behema chaya v'oif v'acher ye'ochel besaron. Shetzivonu lishchot v'acher ye'ochel besaron. Trumas HaMaises Kuf Chavav Kuf Chav Tes Shetzivonu lo'itzi truma gedola. Doesn't say acher kach ye'ochel. Kuf Chav Zayin Maiso Shetzivonu lo'itzi masa mitzemach ha'oretz. Doesn't write acher kach ye'ochel. Kuf Chav Ches masa sheni. Kuf Chav Tes Trumas Maiso. Doesn't write va'acher ye'ochel. And I think it is very obvious also in Zroim and in Hilchos Shchita. Hilchos Shchita is in Sefer Kedusha. So, Protei HaMitzvahs, And the Rambam specifies Tayag Mitzvah Shabbat 3 times in his magnificent Sforim. Minyan HaMitzvahs, which the Rambam describes as Sefer HaMitzvahs HaKotzo, which is an integral part of Mishnah Torah, Sefer HaMitzvahs, and Protei HaMitzvahs. Protei HaMitzvahs in the beginning of Hilchos Shlit, the Lashon of the Rambam, and that's Kaviyat Kotzo Shel Rambam. Protei HaMitzvahs. Lishchot, va'achar kach yoichal. So the mitzvah is not to eat, obviously. So why does the Rambam write Lishchot, va'achar kach yoichal? Clearly proves, if you don't intend to eat, you have no mitzvah of shchita. Halacha Aleph, Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph. Mitzvah says sheyishchot mi sheyirtza lechol basar ba'ein mechaya ba'oiv. So what is the mitzvah? Sheyishchot mi sheyirtza lechol. And if you don't have any intention of eating, you have no mitzvah of shchita. So we see this in Sefer HaMitzvahs, Protei HaMitzvahs, and Perek Aleph, Halacha Aleph. And in Sefer HaMitzvahs we saw, first Tumas HaMaisis doesn't write Achar kach yochel. But in Tumas, Protei HaMitzvahs, Lahafresh Tumah Gedoyel, Lahafresh Tumas Ma'isa. Doesn't write Achar kach yochel. Perek Beis Halacha Aleph. Mitzvah says Lahafresh Mimeno, Kol Davar Shu Oichel, Gedulim Min HaOretz, Trom El HaKoyen, and he does not say Misha Yirtza Lechol. Challah. Hilchos Challah. Actually, we're learning Challah, and Challah is basically the same as Tumas HaMaisis, same basic halachas. So the Rambam in Hilchos Challah as well, and Perek Hey, Halacha Aleph, and the Rambam writes Tzorach Hafresh Challah Ben Wisa, and the Rambam does not say Mishi Yirtza Lechem unless it's Tzorach Hafresh. Perek Hey, Halacha Aleph. So once again, there's a mitzvah of Rosh Hashanah, but there's no mitzvah, and the Rambam doesn't specify Mishi Yirtza Lechem. Hilchos Ishus, Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph. The Rambam defines mitzvahs kedushin. The Rambam writes that a person that wants to live with a woman has a mitzvah kadosh yosef va'achar kach yovei aleo. We find the same in Sefer HaMitzvahs. Shiur Gimel, the Rambam defines mitzvah seirusin, live oil, v'kedushin. So it's very clear. Regarding Edison, regarding Shchita, according to the Rambam, the mitzvah is only when you choose to live with a woman, when you choose to eat a basar. But regarding Challah, Tumas HaMaisis, no. So the Rambam seems to support the Taz, while seems to support the Mugan of Roma and the Kiva Ega, while Rashi, Git Mem Zayin, would be a raya to the Taz. Chazonish, Hilchos Demai, Siman Dalet, Ois Bais. Very, very interesting. The Chazonish writes.
The Rambam saying that it's a mitzvah even if you don't want to eat.
Right.
That's much more like the Taz. Right.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yes. So Rashi clearly is like the Kiva Ega in the Mugan of Rome. Yeah, I just switched it. Rashi clearly says there is no mitzvah for Rosh Tumas HaMaisis. Shelo kebikurim. Bikurim is a mitzvah whether you want to eat or not. Tumas HaMaisis only if you want to eat and when you want to eat. So Rashi supports the Mugan of Rome and the Kiva Ega, while the Rambam l'chayre is a raya to the Taz. Chazonish D'mai, Daled Bais. The Chazonish says that Taz is right. There's a chiyuv of Rosh Tumas HaMaisis, whether you want to eat or not. However, there is no issur in burning or destroying truma, even without the Rosh Tumas HaMaisis. And that seems to be a Tarta V'Satra. Why would that not be defined as Bitul Mitzvahs Aseh? So the Chazanish is somewhat of a compromise. And whenever I quote Chazon Ish, I like to see his Lashon. If we do have a Chazon Ish law, if it's not a Terech Yisrael. So the Chazon Ish on one hand argues, of course the Taz is right. And he has two Gavaldi Gerayis. One is Biur. Shnasa Biur. What is Shnasa Biur about? All the table you have, you need to be Mafresh with Samaisis and give it to a Kohen. Why? How could there be a Chiyuv of a Frosher if it's dependent, does he want to eat or not? And also about Ta'achar. At the beginning of Masechet Rosh Hashanah, Yesh Misha Oimer, that Tumas Amaisis, there's Baal Ta'achar. Gimel Regolim. So why would there be Baal Ta'achar if it's dependent, does he want to eat or not? So the Chazon Ish, Ois Bais, Simen Dalad, and Hilchos Demai, Nere. The Iman Heno Bala Moive Be'esed the Tumas Amaisis, Soiref Einoi Oiver Ba'asai. Afal Gav the Nere Ikar Kedasu Oimrim, the Maser, Yemitzvah Chiyubis, Sharei Oiver Ba'bal Ta'achar, Ve'imei Mitzvah Bal Ta'achar Minayin. If the mitzvah is only a matir, why would there be a Bal Ta'achar? Ve'afa mein Bal Ta'achar, Mekol Mukim Mitzvah's Biur. Ve'ein Svora de B'shas HaBiur Mischadesh's Mitzvah. If it's only a matir. Mekol Mukim. Kol Shalei Over Adayim B'Bal Ta'achar, Sarvoi U'miftar Ma'asei. B'tzorhi. V'ayin Minchas Chinuch Reish Pei Daled. The Minchas Chinuch clearly says Reish Pei Daled. According to the Taz, if it's not a matir, but rather a mitzvah, then if you destroy Tumah, Tevel, without being mafresh, you're a mavakel mitzvah sasei. Chazon Ish says, I don't think so. It is a mitzvah chiyuvis, but if you destroyed it, then you're niftar min mitzvah. You're not mevakel a mitzvah. How would that be? How would we understand the Chazon Ish? So let me share with you my feeling. And I think the proper Adora is in the middle, somewhere in between. Because most of the Achroinim, and I think even Rabbi Akiva Eiger, understands one of two. Either Afroshas Tumas Amaisis is a matir, and a matir belvad, like Shrita, or it's a mitzvah chiyuvis, regardless of whether you want to eat or not. No. I think if you don't want to eat, you don't have a mitzvah. And the Rambam could agree with that. If you don't want to eat, you don't have a mitzvah. But if you want to eat, it's not only a matir, it's a mitzvah. And I think this is so logical because you also have a mitzvah of Nesina L'Koyim. So you can't say Tumas Amaisis is only about Issa V'Heta. If I don't want to eat, I don't take for myself, I don't have to share with others. If I take for myself, I have to share with others. If I take for myself, I have to give some of it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to his people. So on one hand, if a person doesn't intend to eat, he has no mitzvah. But on the other hand, of course it's a mitzvah, not only a matir. The Taz feels that Shlit is not even a mitzvah. And that is the Shita of the Ritzbo, brought once in the entire Shas. Pal Mechot B'Shas, Shavuos Chov Dalet, Tosis bring the Ritzbo. Ritzbo, that Shlit is not a mitzvah sasei. And that's the opinion of the Taz. It's a matir, not a mitzvah. Afroshas Tumas Amaisis definitely is a mitzvah. Whether Afroshas Nesin is one mitzvah, Kishitas HaRamban, or two mitzvahs, Kishitas HaRamban. The Ramban feels Afrosh HaRachud, Nesin HaRachud, two different mitzvahs. The Rambam says they're two parts of one mitzvah. Regardless, it has nothing to do with what I say right now, even if it's two mitzvahs. But in essence, Afroshas Tumas Amaisis is about giving. It's not only a matter. But on the other hand, if I don't intend to eat, I don't have any chiyuv of Afroshas Tumas Amaisis. But if I do intend to eat, then you know, it's not about Tamei mitzvahs, it's about Hagdoros of mitzvahs. And I explained in the past, sometimes the difference between Tamei mitzvahs and Hagdoros of mitzvahs is a bit, it's not Kikoris Beis Abad, it's Kechut Asara. But the Frosh's Tumas of Isis is about sharing. The moment you decide to take for yourself, give to others. The Koyanim and the Leviim have no chelik b'Eretz Yisrael. They dedicate their lives to be your shliach in the Bais HaMikdash. So if you take for yourself, you have to share with them. So I don't think there necessarily is a stira between the Rambam and Rashi. I think they both could agree, and therefore, why should there be a vikuach between the Taz and the Kiveya? So I think Afroshes, Tumas Amaisis, and Challah is only a chiyuv if you intend to consume and to be nehana and take benefit. Otherwise, you have no chiyuv of Afroshes, Tumas Amaisis. But if you do intend to eat, it's not only about being matir, it's about sharing. And therefore, you have a shuachas koymen, and tzriz magdim ala mitzvahs, and there is balta achar, and there is a chiyuv of biur. But if you let the fruit rot out in the field, you have no biur, no balta achar, nothing. You don't have a chiyuv. But once you decided, you grow, and you make this issa for your benefit, and you intend to be nana, then you have a mitzvah. And it's not only about being a matir. And so I think Rashi is right. No machlokes Rashi in Rambam. So it definitely is different than Shchita. Because Shchita is only a matir. Rosh Hashanah is not only a matir. But there is no mitzvah. Elohim can eat. So, and therefore the Chazon Ish is right. If you burn, then obviously you're not going to eat it. So if you decide to burn it, then you're not mevatel mitzvah say. But that's not what the Chazon Ish had in mind. Because if that is what the Chazon Ish had in mind, you wouldn't write the Tzorchiyun. It's not Tzorchiyun at all. It's Poshut. So the Chazon Ish has a different idea. And the Chazon Ish says it is a chiyuv. But if you destroy the tumah, it's not defined. You are mafsid of mitzvah say, but not mevatel of mitzvah say. It is only when you eat without the frosha that you define as a mevatel mitzvah say. But as long as you don't eat, you burn, you're mafsid the opportunity. You will no longer be able to be mekayim the mitzvah, but it is not defined as a bitul mitzvah say. And that is the big chiddush, and that is why the Chazon Ish writes with tzorchiyun. Ledidi, it's not a tzorchiyun at all. Because once you decide you're going to burn, then you don't have a mitzvah. The fact that you decided at some stage you want to eat and the mitzvah was chal, maybe that's a tzorchiyun of the Chazon Ish. You already had the mitzvah when you decided to eat. But my feeling would be, as long as I plan to eat, I had the mitzvah. The moment I no longer plan to eat, I no longer have the mitzvah. So, to me, that would be very, very misdaf.
Are we willing to say this only when we see him soyrif and mevatel that potential achila? Or let's say he has his creed and he's misakin alatzad. He doesn't really plan on eating it. Would we say it even there? Because he doesn't take a plan on eating, but he's not.
So let me make another point. Even according to my opinion, he doesn't have a chiyuv if he doesn't plan to eat. But if he's mafish to Mesamaisis, he was Mekayim a mitzvah, and he can even say a bracha. Because after all, you're metaken as a kri. And if you plan to eat, you could. And if others eat, you are matir. So I'm speaking about the chiyuv. And Semiyutes in Yoredeya, coming back to Hilchos Shchita again, there's a machlokes, shoychet leklovim. Can he say a bracha, or can't he say a bracha? So the Ginas of Rodim was one of the Sephardi Gedolim going back 300 years, more than 300 years, says, shoychet leklovim is a bracha levatov. Because you don't have a mitzvah if you don't intend to eat basar. Chochmas Sodom and Klal Hey, and before the Chochmas Sodom, the Pri Chodesh and Siman Yutes, they say, no, even Shechet Leklovim could say a bracha. Because once he's mati of the Bosel Achila, that is mitzvah shchita. It's not a chiyuv. But after all, shchita is not only about performing a mitzvah. The result of shchita is, it is a matio. The question is it only a matio? But once you're mata the bosel achila, and the shchita is a shchitik sheila, you perform the mitzvah shchita. And the brocha is not a brocha of the Torah. And I definitely would say the same regarding Tumas Amaisis, because after all, there is Kedushas Teruma. And once you are Mafresh Teruma, you also earn the mitzvah of Nesina L'Koyin. So the question is there a Chiyuv or not? But even if you have no intention of eating the Shirayim, after all, you are Mafresh Tumas, and the Tumas Chal, and have Kedushas Teruma. And from now on, you need to give for a Koyin, so of course you could make a brocha. But the question is there a chiyuv or there's not a chiyuv?
I mean, there's one chiyuv on the kriya, one chiyuv on the person.
It's not a mitzvah on the kriya.
The chiyuv inside the kriya itself. I mean, that's what the Rav seems to be saying.
No, I'm differentiating between a chiyuv and a mitzvah. I'm differentiating between a chiyuv and a mitzvah. Between a chiyuv and a mitzvah. So, not between the din ala kriya and the din ala gavra. Anybody that's mafish tumas amaisis was makayim a mitzvah. Anybody that performed shchita was makayim a mitzvah. So, according to the Chayodam and the Pri Chodesh, I have a very strange question. Would there be a midas chasidus for a tzaddik to carry around the second shel shchita, and whenever he sees a bird or an animal, chop off its head, cut him up, and be Makayim mitzvah shchita? Would it be a midas chasidus? Because we say, even though if you don't intend to eat, you can still make a bracha. Yeah? So definitely doesn't have a chiyuv. Will it be a midas chasidus? Will it be the right thing to do? So many times I say, chacham le yikar mitzvahs. Not always is a mitzvah the right thing to do. For newcomers, they'll think I said something very strange. My Talmidim are already used to my strange stories. Sometimes performing a mitzvah is the wrong thing to do. Even though in the Heftzah, it's a mitzvah. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, like he said to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, "V'chiyotze zeh lahachra b'seilomi," are you out of your mind? Why are you killing animals? And it's Bal Tashchis, and it's Tzar Balachayim. But in the Heftzah, if he made a brocha, it's not a brocha levatollah, because he was Mekayim mitzvah shchita. So, Kodesh Baruch Hu gives schar al asiyas retzoinoi. Not always is the Heftzah of a mitzvah retzoin Hashem. And there are many, many examples, but we don't have time. That's not the sugya we're talking about. So by Froshes Tumas Amaisis, maybe it is a midas chasidus. Maybe it is, because it's not Bal Tashchis, it's not Tzar Balachayim. You're not destroying. And after all, when you're mafresh tumas amaisis, even though you don't intend to eat, but from now on, you're definitely going to be mekayim a mitzvah chayuvis, because you need to give these tumas amaisis l'koyin v'lalevi. So regarding tumas amaisis, maybe it would be a mitzvah chasidus. Bizmaneinu, if we don't give tumas amaisis, maybe there no longer would be. But I still think, if there's no downside, you're still making a bracha. And if you make a bracha, first of all, every bracha is shavasol azumi, thanking a Kodesh Baruch Hu. If it's a valid bracha, then you earn something, and you perform the mitzvah different than shchita. So once again, the Chazon Ish is one chiddush, and the Chazon Ish argues it's a chiyuv, a mitzvah chiyuvis, whether you want to eat or you don't want to eat. So the Chazon Ish sides with the Taz. But on the other hand, and that is why he says that the halacha is nere ikar kedas u oimrim. Shetumas amais is a mitzvah chiyuvis. He definitely means the Taz against the Akiva Ego. But he comes up with a chiddush. Destroying would not be defined as a bitul. It would be defined as he'ader kiyum. When you eat without Rosh Hashanah, that would be bittul, because that is the Siba. But my approach would be different. And I think if you don't intend to eat, you have no mitzvah. Neither Tumas, neither Maisus, neither Tumas Maisa, neither Challah. But if you intend to eat, it's not only a matio. It's not only about being matir the payas. It is about the moment you intend to eat, you have the mitzvah. And the mitzvah is about giving a Kodesh Baruch Hu and his shluchim, giving him their share. It's not only for yourself, it's about others as well. And that would be miyashav, the argument of the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish says, if it's only a matir, how could it be balteacha? How could it be shas biur? Biur is only the zman that you need to perform previous mitzvahs, but biur is not machadish a mitzvah. How would biur be machadish a mitzvah? And that is an overpowering argument. If it's only a matir, then what does the shas biur mean? So I say, there's no shas biur is only if you intend ultimately to eat those payas, and only then is there a chiyuv. So that is the difference between truma on one hand and shita on the other hand. So in the past, I dealt with a fundamental question regarding Hagdoras or mitzvahs. A mitzvah that is a matio, is it defined as a proper mitzvah say? So the Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvahs, Kuf Mem Vav, the Rambam counts shita as a mitzvah say. Kuf Mem Tes, the Rambam also counts B'dikas Samonim Tahara. The Samonim that differentiate between Minim Tameim and Minim Tahirim. Behema, Chaya, Dogim. Ayoifis, there are no Samonim, but rather a Messiah. And the Rambam defines B'dikas Samonim as mitzvah. And in Sefer HaMitzvahs, the Ravid is the Barpuk of the Rambam. Minyan HaMitzvahs is the Ramban. But I explained before, Sefer HaMitzvahs is part of the Mishnah Torah. So the Ravid is Masik, and the Kesef Mishnah is Miyashiv. So the Ravid, both Kuf Mem Vav and Kuf Mem Tes says, the Rambam is off mark. Because Shlit is Alava Bo Mechlal Asay, and it should not be in the Minyan of Mitzvah Asay. Neither B'dikas Samonim nor Shlit. The Kesef Mishnah says, according to the Rambam, still is defined as a mitzvah say. The Ravid argues it's kum v'asei, but it's a matio, so it's more closely associated with the isor than it is with mitzvah say. So according to the Ravid, that should not be b'minyan ha-mitzvahs. But the Rambam counts kuf chov Bais gimel daled hey vav zayin as we saw for all the mitzvahs of two. No, not Bais. No. All the mitzvahs of Rosh Hashanah, from Kuf Chavov to Kuf Chav Tes, and the Ravid is not Nasi. So this once again proves that there's a difference. Shchita, B'dikas Samonim are only a matio. Truma is different. Truma is a mitzvah. And so the Ravid doesn't necessarily support the Taz. The Taz clearly says, there's a mitzvah even if he doesn't intend to eat. No. So many years ago I thought that the Ravid is a raya to the Taz. But I don't think so. Maybe the Ravid would agree, as I say, there's no mitzvah unless he intends to eat. But it's not only a matir, it's not a Rava Bo Mechlal say. When he decides to eat, it is a mitzvah to share. And therefore, the Ravid has no hasuga regarding flushes. So, I compiled a list of 9 mitzvahs, which are all mitzvahs kiyumiyos. Mitzvahs that are not defined as mitzvahs chiyuviyos. Mitzvahs that only rest upon us when we decide to partake of inyonim shel rishus. They're not mitzvahs chiyuviyos, but they go into 3 different clothing, 3 different categories. Tzitzis, Kiddushin, and Sukkah. If a person doesn't want to live with a woman, he has no mitzvah of elusin. Doesn't want to wear dalet kanfis, no mitzvah of tzitzis. If he doesn't eat, Shabbos Yomei Echad, doesn't have to sit in sukkah. But these three mitzvahs are definitely mitzvahs asay, beyond doubt. They cannot be defined as a matio, because the only isser to eat chutz l'sukkah is bittul mitzvah sukkah. The only isser to wear dalet kanfis without tzitzis is bittul mitzvah tzitzis. And the only isser to be with a woman without kiddushin is bittul mitzvah kiddushin. So which isser exactly are these mitzvahs matio? There is no isser. Contrary to shchita, that's matio nevela nevim and achai, tumas amaises that are matio teva. So I explained that tumas amaises is different than shchita, but they do have something in common. Both are matio as ha'osur. What I explained is tumas amaises is not only a matio. It is a matio, but it goes beyond being a matio. Tzitzis, sukkah, kiddushin cannot be defined at all as a matio. It's a different category, different yisoid, a different agdara. These mitzvahs don't rest upon you unless you decide to do something that you're not mechuyev to do. But they cannot be defined as matirim. Category number 2, shchita, bedika, samoni, which are only a matio. And it's a machlokas lamba merave. Do they belong in Tariyat or they don't belong in Tariyat? But they are matirim. Gerushin. The Rambam counts gerushin in minyan mitzvahs. It is in the list. Reish Chov Bais. Chalitza. Reish Yud Zayin. Chalitza and gerushin, once again, are only a mitzvah if you want to leave your wife. She wants to remarry. She doesn't want to remarry. And you don't want to remarry after Cherem Deravenu Gershon, then there's no Chiyuv of Gerushin. Same thing with Chalitza. Most boys can pass him. If a woman doesn't want to remarry, she has no mitzvah of Chalitza. So Gershon and Chalitza are matirim, and they definitely come to Asar. They come to be matir, another Isser. Isser Eishes Ish. Isser Yavom Shuk. It's a lav. Lo Isser Eishes Ameis Achutza Le'ish Zar. So these are matirim. Why doesn't the Rabbi disagree with the Rambam when the Rambam counts them in the list of Tariyat mitzvahs? Why are they different than Bedika Samonim and Shrita? They're different because besides being matirim, they're also dinim. They change the status of a person. So they are dinim, and dinim belong in the list of Tariyat. Even though no chiyuv whatsoever, unless these people want to remarry. So Gerush and Chalitza are matirim. So why doesn't the Rabbi disagree with the Rambam? Because they are dinim. They change the status of dinim. She is no longer an Eishes Ish. She is no longer a Yavoma, Mekan and Ahava. And that is an additional reason why Kiddushin is a mitzvah saseh. Because Kiddushin is not only a mitzvah, it's a din, it's a kinyan. It changes the status. She was a Pnuya, no longer, now she's an Eishes Ish. Gerushin, she was an Eishes Ish, no longer, now she's a Pnuya. And dinim belong in the minyan, just like Mekach, Memkar, which the Rambam counts in Reish Mem Hei. So 3 categories. Only regarding Shrita and Bedika Samonim does the Rabbi disagree with the Rambam. They are not dinim, only mitzvahs. And the entire essence of these mitzvahs is to be matio. According to the Rabbi, it doesn't belong in the list of mitzvahs the same. Kiddushin, Sukkah, Tzitzis, 3 mitzvahs that are kiyumi, not chiyuvi. Trumas HaMaisis as well. even according to my pshut. If you don't want to eat, you don't have a chiyuv. But they are not just a matiyah. Tzitzis, sukkah, kiddushin cannot be defined as a matiyah because there's no other issur. There's no issur that these mitzvahs are matiyah. Kiddushin and truma, for an additional reason, would not be defined as matiyah because they change status. They're dinim. Rosh Hashanah is not only a matiyah. Kiddush is a truma. Shevet kehina. It regards a momentus. It's not moment of violet. It's a moment of shevet. So dinim have a different status. So we spoke about shchita, bedika, kiddushin, sukkah, tzitzis, gerushin, chalitza, mekah, trumas hamaisis. Trumas hamaisis in itself is 5 different pieces. And we made sale. We still have some time left, and because there are so many sugyas, right now I go over to sugya number 2. And I have a disagreement with many in this sugya. So Rashi ala Torah in Pasha Shlach, by the very source of mitzvahs, Afroshas Challah, the Noid of Yehuda argues that there is a stira minei ubei in Rashi ala Torah. וידבר השם אל מוישה לאמור, דבר בני ישראל אמרתי עליהם יבורכם על הארץ אשר ימי בעצם שלמה. ויאכלכם אליכם ארץ תורימו תרומה להשם כתרומס הגויין כן תרימו עשם. Writes Rashi, כתרומס הגויין שלא נאמר בו שיעור. ולא כתרומס מייסס שיש בו שיעור. אבל חכמים נוסנו שיעור. בעל בייס אחד מחול ד' נחתם אחד מרבון בשמיים. And then the pasuk goes on. Medrash arisasechem titnu Hashem truma l'dereisechem. Kosev Rashi titnu Hashem truma lefi shelo shamanu shiur l'chala. Ne'amar titnu. Sheheba kedei nesina. Sheheba kedei nesina. What is kedei nesina? Rashi, just one pasuk earlier, Rashi writes ketrumis hagoyred sheloi nemo bo shiur. So the Noid of Yehuda, famous Shuva, Madura Tinyona, Yoredeas in Reish Aleph, writes, and this is common in the Noid of Yehuda. He was so happy with his Chedushim, Simchas HaTorah, and he writes, I'm going to be Machadish something, Shalai Omar Adam Me'orina. Not everybody would be proud to say something no one ever said. No one ever said. You need to ask yourself, why didn't they say it? You know, if it's right, how come no one said it? But that's the Noid of Yehuda. He writes, nobody ever came up with this amazing idea. So the Noid of Yehuda says, Shnei dinim, yesh betumas hamaises ubachala. Hafrosha ein lo shiur, nesina yesh lo shiur. And it's very beautiful in Psukei HaTorah. Reishas arisasechem chala toru tarimu truma kedorisech kein tarimu oisam. Harama is a frosha. And a frosha, Rashi writes, ain't no shiur. But when the pasuk says Mereishas arisasechem titnu laShem truma kedorisechem, that is nesina. Nesina, yes, lo shiur. Nesina means to be nesina chashuva. Hafroshana. And that is why Chazal say, Chito achas, poiteres esakri. To pater the kri, it's enough Chito achas, but you're not mekayim the mitzvah of Nesina. To be mekayim the mitzvah of Nesina has to be a Nesina cheshuva. And the Noid of Yehuda says, Chav Dalet is a sheer dioraisa, not for a frosha, but rather for Nesina. The son of the Noid of Yehuda, Reb Shmuel Ander, who was also one of the Gedolei Hador and Memala Mokom HaTorah, says, no. If Chav Dalet is a sheer dioraisa, how are Chazal Mekel and Nachton? And Mevatel and Mitzvah dioraisa. Doesn't touch Tevel, because the frosha is kolshu, Chito achas. But how will Chazal Mevatel and Mitzvah of Nesina L'Koyim if Chav Dalet is a sheer dioraisa? Okay, it's Sheval Taisa. Yesh korach biyad chachom and lakadum and Torah Yisrael Taisa, but why? Why? Just to save money from the Nachton. So the son of the Noida Yehuda suggests it would be more reasonable to say that Echad Mimem Ches is the Shiur Yoraisa, and Chachamim were Machmir for about a Bais. If it would depend on me, I would say no. There is no Shiur Yoraisa. Nesina Chashuva. Why shouldn't we learn Rashi as is? Tiritit no lefisha lo inema b'shir tzirach tzorach nesina chashuva. Nimsa davar lachachamim. But Minat Torah, it is undefined. One thing is sure: it's not chito achas poteres esakri. Tzorach nesina chashuv. So I don't know whether the Noida Yehuda would be happy or sad to learn that two of the Rishonim were his predecessors, and they said it before him. One is the Toysus Shlit, Rabbeinu Yeshayahu Arishon, in Kedusha Nun Ches, and Rabbi Yosef Shon Natanzal wrote Hagoas. Hen on Toysus Shlit Kedushin, and on the Noida Yehuda. So on both sources, Rabbi Yosef Shon Natanzal writes, Noida Yehuda thought he's the first Buddha say here. So the Toysus Shlit came before him, and Rabbi Yosef Shon is Mitzayin, Hem in his Agos on the Toysus Shlit, and Hem the Agos on the Noida Yehuda. But there's an addition, and that is Maram Chalnavim, so in Lamed Beis. And he says, Mamish Teseh. Chito Achas Pateres Sakri Afrosh, Mrs. Nesina, Tzorach Nesina. But the Noida Yehuda and his son, I don't know why they think that the Shiur Yoraisa is either Echad Mechov Dalad or Echad Memem Ches. I think it would be more reasonable to say there is no Shiur. Nesina also has no Shiur, but it needs to be in Nesina Chashuv. Psochim Lamed Bais. Baba Metziah Mem Zayin. Toises proves from Truma that ain't Shiur LeNesina. And Kolshi is Nesina. Sharei, Chitwachas Poteres Sakri. So this Toises definitely goes against the Noida Yehuda and the other Rishonim. According to the Maram Chalav and Toises Shlit, the Noida Yehuda, no. Nesina is not Kolshu. And Toises proves from Truma Gedoyla, Chitwachas Poteres Sakri, that Nesina has no Shiur. So it is a Kiddush.